That lighting still sucks, doesn't it? All right, camera's gonna move, so be aware. Okay, that's probably as good as I'm gonna get without setting up my lights. So I'm not gonna do that right now. So it is roughly the end of the second week of May. So as you noticed in the title, I have now decided to do these monthly review roundups twice a month instead of once a month, largely in time conservation move. As like last month for April, I waited till the end of the month and did one for the whole month. And it was a 3-hour-long video, 3-hour-long stream of me going through the 30-some movies I watched. And this month was shaping up to be another like that. As right now, halfway through the month, I already have 21. So I'm keeping up my pace of trying to get in one a day. So I have 21 to share and talk about with you tonight, or today, whenever you happen to be watching this. For me, it's nighttime, but right now. But you don't care. That's fine. So I got 21 films to talk about in order of when I saw them this month. So all movies today, no television to talk of today. Only a couple shorts this month so far. And the first thing we must talk about is a short from last year called Nightlight. I fucking hated this thing. There's no plot. It's just a bunch of like cutout paper animation style, like Monty Python, the Monty Python shows animation. It's like that. There's no plot to it. There's nothing funny. There's nothing interesting. Nothing happens. It's just a bunch of random, unconnected bullshit going on and on. And thankfully it's only like 3 or 4 minutes long, but it's just so pointless and so stupid. And let me turn my ringer off here. Okay. So it's just so stupid. Like, don't bother. There's no point. Even though it's only 4 minutes, it's not worth it. So now let me pull up my review notes. This will help. Last time I started struggling with some of my discussions of the movies because I had forgotten I wrote about them. So much easier. I'll just pull up what I wrote. I'll just pull up my articles. I'll just pull up my reviews, and I'll reference them. I won't read them straight off of there, as that would be very boring. And why don't I just link you to those, and then you can just read those all for yourself, not have to hear me talk. I'd kind of defeat part of the point here. So the first one from this year, I'm still working on mostly just this year and last year films, still trying to get as many from this year in as I can right now, and catch up on some of the stuff from last year that I heard was really good or that I was interested in seeing. So from this year, Paddington 2, let's discuss. Of course, the sequel to Paddington from, I believe, 2015, maybe 16, I forget which now. One of the two. And I talked about that one last month in my April video, and I thoroughly loved the first Paddington, and the second one is honestly maybe even better than the first one. The animation on Paddington is still just absolutely adorable. He's an adorable little bear, and tells a heartfelt and touching story about love, family, and adoption, and it combines for an absolutely delightful but tearful film at the end. The end is a tearjerker. If you're prone to that, I will warn you. The ending is going to get you more likely than not. But all in all, I thoroughly loved Paddington 2. Recommend you see both of them. I would say 2's better than 1, but just barely, not a lot. They're both great. Mostly the greatness of this one, at least as far as an improvement over the first Paddington, is in the villain character. Nicole Kidman in the first one's fine. Hugh Grant plays this essentially comedic version of himself as this Broadway actor who's been forced into doing lesser roles and is gonna has been forced into dog food commercials and is gonna make a big comeback with a one-man show on the theater circuit. And he's delightful throughout, as everyone is in this film, So all in all, I thoroughly recommend Paddington 2. Another film from this year, Saturday Church. This is a musical, which I was very excited to see. This one I really liked. I was very intrigued by the plot summary, as it deals with a young black trans woman dealing with that, with the death of her father, and then the subsequent arrival of her highly conservative Christian aunt. This is a film that deals mostly with the trans issues. It doesn't really deal with the issue of being trans within the black community. That's not really addressed, which, that's fine. We're not quite to that level of nuance yet on trans films in a popular context. We're not quite that far yet, unfortunately. We just recently got there with gay-themed films to an extent with Moonlight. So, and even to an extent with Get Out, that was very different. But we may get there. We hopefully will get there at some point with trans issues and trans films. But this one deals purely with the trans part. Unfortunately, the story isn't terribly interesting. It should be very interesting, very emotionally engaging, and kind of, intelligently engaging. Should engage your intelligence and your emotions. And it doesn't really do either of those. It doesn't really make you care about the main character of this film as much as you should. And it is a very unique film, being about a black male to female trans teen, as well as a musical. But beyond that uniqueness, there's not a lot else to it, unfortunately. I would still recommend it because it does have some good songs. Most notably, Conditions of Love is one of the songs in it, which is a great track. I will warn you, the musical, the numbers are set to modern pop tracks, like modern pop music, like electronic beats and stuff. So if you have a big aversion to that kind of stuff, be aware. And there's also a romantic relationship between the main teen and this other dude, which is maybe a little iffy if you think about it. The film doesn't treat it as such, and the film doesn't bring this up, so it's probably fine. But the like the main character of this film is supposed to be like 15 and is obviously dating like at least like a 20-year-old dude, which, you know, it's never really addressed or brought up, but it's a thing. So if that might be an issue for you as well, you know, be aware for that too. But all in all, still a terrific musical, but not a great film. It's okay. I do recommend it, but you're probably not going to get anything terribly interesting or superbly exciting out of this. I don't think. I didn't. Let's talk about a film whose sequel came out just recently, and will be talking about in my second half video. That is Deadpool. I'd seen the first one before, but this is the first time I watched it since I started doing the show here, so we'll talk about it. So I thoroughly enjoyed the first Deadpool. When you watch it on repeat, like I think the one here, this is my fourth viewing of the film. So after that many times, the whole origin story part is, you know, of Wade, has cancer and goes to a Weapon X type program, but is a presumably voluntary program, unlike Weapon X, to develop his superpowers and stuff. Like that whole bit, the romance bit, isn't particularly engaging on a rewatch. After 3 of them, it's not particularly interesting anymore. The jokes still work. The non-origin story parts are still terrific, and I do love the way they chose to tell that. In the fashion of, okay, let's start with the big fun action scene, and then throughout the action scene, break back to the origin story, and then at the halfway point we meet, and then we do the rest of the film. I liked the way that was structured. That's a very smart way to structure this kind of shit, so you don't get like Wonder Woman, although Wonder Woman's not bad, but so you don't get stuff like that where it's, okay, the first hour of the movie is just, okay, they're born, or wherever you want to start, the inciting incident for their superpowers happens, whether that's they're born or Batman's parents get killed, or whatever. We start there, and then we work our way up for a full hour till, now after an hour they are now Deadpool, or they're now Batman or Wonder Woman or Superman or whatever, right? And then the next 30, 40 minutes is the fun part of the movie, generally, right? I'm glad they didn't do that. And I will say, even though the romance and all does kind of fall flat after repeat viewings, the sex montage is still wonderful. If a little excessive, maybe, but that's kind of part of the point of Deadpool, is that it's excessive in many ways. Numbered jokes, violence, gore, profanity. It's excessive in many ways. So why not be excessive in a sex montage, right? So that's fine. Ryan Reynolds is great as Deadpool, and can't wait to see Deadpool 2 in a couple days from now for me. So very excited for that. So let's talk about another film I was very excited about. And that is the newest from Jason Reitman, Tully, with Charlize Theron as a mother who is not officially, but might as well be single as far as the support she gets from her husband in terms of raising the children. You know, this is a very funny, in both a standard as well as it has a dark streak as well here. It has a dark comedy streak running through this film too, which you don't realize at first, but by the end you're like, oh yeah, gotcha, okay. So it is very funny. It's also very brutally honest about the struggles of modern motherhood and motherhood in general, really. I think this is a story that, while yes, it does deal mostly with more modern concerns, such as, you know, self-care, mental health, postpartum depression, which weren't terribly thought about or concerned anyone in the past, or more modern have come to forefront of concerns more recently, unfortunately, but, you know, better late than never. This film deals very heavily with those things in a very interesting and, to me, very inventive way. Now, there is a very unexpected twist in the third act, which, since this is a spoiler review of everything, as I said down in the description, I am not going to spoil for you the twist, which is that the nanny that Charlize hires is not there. That it's all Charlize, it's all in Charlize's head, and that made the film even better. Helped it more. To me, before that, I was like, okay, this is pretty standard, nothing too special about it. And then the twist happens, and it's, oh shit, okay, that's what you're doing. Oh, okay, and it made me reevaluate the whole film and gave me a much higher, greater appreciation for everything I had seen before in the film before that twist. Now, I do need to rewatch this to make sure this twist does logically fit. I assume it does. There's nothing that sticks out in my memory as there's no way, because of this scene in particular. So, you know, like A Happy Death Day was the one last year where the twist, and then it's like, well, I rewatch it and it's like, no, can't be, because of this, and this doesn't work here, filmmakers. So I'll be interested when this gets on home video and I get it from the library to see how it holds up once I know the twist, see if it does logically work still. It should. There's nothing that stands out to me that it's not. Charlize is very good in this whole movie. She plays her part beautifully, as does pretty much the entire rest of the cast here. There are dream sequences in this which caught me off guard the first time, like especially the very first one. I was sitting there in theater, the first dream sequence happens, and my first thought was, oh God, Reitman's going artsy, symbolic Aronofsky on us. Oh fuck, what's this? Luckily, that was not the case. It turned out to be the rather clever foreshadowing for the what will become the beginning of the twist when you get to it at the end. So, all in all, I love Tully. Highly recommend this one, as well as Reitman's other two great films, Juno and Young Adult. The rest of his you can kind of skip, if you ask me. But this trilogy, I guess, what are we going to call this? What are we calling this trilogy here? Because this is like the the Cornetto trilogy with Edgar Wright, right? You know, Shaun of the Dead, World's End, and Hot Fuzz, right? Like, what's this trilogy known as? Gonna be known as? I don't really know. I think I call it the Aging trilogy, but that's not really too accurate. But yeah, this was great. Highly recommend this one. Speaking of things I did, and then in the polar opposite, we have the 1517 to Paris, Clint Eastwood's latest directorial outing, with, I don't know, some people, the main leads. I have no idea who the fuck these people are. But he also has Tony Hale, Jenna Fisher, and Jaleel White show up. Like, just randomly, they're here for some reason in very bizarre choices. And, you know, this is such a deeply uninteresting film. And, you know, Eastwood, I've never cared for Eastwood as a director. An actor, it's a bit different. He's very hit or miss as an actor, which is mostly just due to he did a shit ton of Westerns, and I'm hit or miss on Westerns in general. But as a director, I've never once cared for Eastwood as a director. And this is not going to do anything to change that. Oh my God. So the whole selling point of this movie is that, you know, there are people who stop a terrorist attack on a train, is the selling point, right? That, oh, these people stop a terrorist attack on a train or whatever. Unfortunately, that's only like the last 10 minutes of the movie or so. Everything other than that is attempting to add some sort of context and characterization to these people that just doesn't work whatsoever. Like, these people are so fucking bland, so boring. There is, I think, an attempt at exploring the like the brainwashed nature of many of the youth of the mid-2000s when it comes to the American military and the glorified nature of war and military service, thanks in, you know, large part to these kind of movies, to the Hollywood film industry. I think that was supposed to be what Eastwood was going for, but you know, Clint's too blindly devoted to portraying any and everything to do with America and the American military in a positive light that nothing remotely interesting comes of roughly the first 30 minutes, which is basically just devoted to that. The only good part of the movie is when it's actively avoiding its own plot, because, you know, about the middle 30 minutes, luckily this is a 90-minute movie, and like the movie's in 30-minute chunks. First 30 is the fuckers are in high school or in middle school or whatever, and they decide to join the military for some fucking reason, and then they're training. Then the middle 30 minutes, then the last 30 minutes is all the stuff on and around the train part. Then the middle 30 minutes is the good 30 minutes, which it just turns into like a tourist home video of Europe. I enjoyed it. You know, it was the part that had nothing to do with the rest of the movie, and the characters shut up finally, which was nice. You know, or they were talking, they're like, ooh, look at that fucking building. Ooh, wow. Like, okay, sure. You know, it's like, okay, I'm watching some person's, you know, European vacation vlog on YouTube here. Like, okay, I'm down for this shit. Okay. You know, which is not a great great bit for your movie, not a great point for your film. That the best part of it is when your actors basically are not talking, and you are actively not telling any part of the story whatsoever. Not good sign. And the decision, no matter how pure the intent was, to cast the people who actually stopped this attack in real life is an awful decision. No matter how pure this intent was, it's an awful decision, as none of them can act to save their lives. Also, in another very bizarre decision, there are a lot of good to great comedic actors and actresses. Tony Hale, Jaleel White, Jenna Fisher, Judy Greer, namely, who are all cast in this movie, but they're only doing dramatic roles. There's nothing comedic about their characters, which, Tony Hale, I've never seen him pull off a dramatic role. He doesn't really do it here. The rest, I'm not familiar enough with their career outside of the one thing they're known for to say. But them in dramatic roles does not work at all, especially not. Well, definitely, Jenna Fisher's the one who gets to do the most in this movie, and she doesn't really work in this film at all, unfortunately. So I do not recommend this one unless you're an Eastwood directorial completist. Do not fucking bother with this thing. So let us head back to last year for a little bit here. Let me pull up these here. So we got Pitch Perfect 3. I was interested in this one. Mostly just I enjoyed the first two, and this is, it's the same shit. It's what you expect it to be. It's fun for what it is. It's fine for what it is, but I'm never going to watch this again. I don't want to watch this ever again, but, for one viewing, it's fine. The song numbers, although completely unoriginal, of course, as they're just all covers, are fine. The biggest issue with this movie, which I don't recall the first two because I haven't watched them since they came out, so I don't fucking remember, and I don't care enough to check, is that this time they show us non-acapella groups performing, and those groups were so infinitely more interesting than the main acapella chick group, whose name I forget right now, but that was interesting. I liked the other bands a lot more than I cared for the main girls' musical performances. There's an entire, I'd say, 20-minute section devoted to going to a party or something hosted by, who was it? Some DJ. I don't know who he is. Some DJ or something here. I assume he's some popular rapper or something. I don't know. So that's a good 20, 30 minutes of this fucking movie is devoted to this DJ motherfucker. Other than the musical performances, none of this is particularly good in any way. There is one bizarre but really fun action sequence involving the character called Fat Amy. That's what they call her for some. That's her fucking name for some, apparently. Where she turns into fucking John Wick or something and just starts icing motherfuckers left and right. Now, unfortunately, she doesn't start shooting them, but she just starts kicking people. I guess she's more like Bruce Lee than anyone, but she turns into Liu Kang for some reason and just starts kicking a bunch of dudes, and that part's very weird, very just randomly out of place, but provided a good laugh, mostly of the what the fuck is going on kind of laugh, but it got one. So if you've seen the first two and you know what you're getting yourself into, this is good for that. But for more than, that, it's a piece of shit. But, I liked it nonetheless. I'm never going to watch it again, though. But, I enjoyed it for the time I watched it. So now a movie I did not enjoy, which is very sad to say. So this is a film that a lot of people loved last year, and I do not fucking get it. Now, obviously, it's not Florida Project. I talked about that last month. Good Time. I don't get it, people. What the fuck did I miss with this? Let me know. Please, someone in the comments, let me know, what did I miss with Good Time? Because I did not get why people liked this. Like, the narrative is basically non-existent. Like, so Robert Pattinson is great. He's great here. I will give him that. He is terrific. And his brother is mentally handicapped and portrayed very painfully by Benny Safdie. And sort of like Tom Hanks and Forrest Gump, it's a very painful portrayal of a mental handicapped individual. So he's put in jail for a bank robbery that him and Pattinson commit. Yeah, I'm just straight reading my own plot summary here. So Pattinson goes to, I don't remember their fucking names. So Pattinson goes to the hospital to break him out. He's there for injuries he sustains in prison for some reason. Breaks out the wrong guy, as you would expect it to have been, and way too easily in my mind, but I can overlook that for, plot convenience. Then they go to an amusement park to get acid and money that's been hidden. Then Pattinson and the dude get arrested. Then Pattinson's brother's freed from prison, not because of anything that Pattinson does, therefore making the entire film that just happened entirely pointless. And the credits roll. So the journey that Pattinson goes on is not particularly funny or action-packed or engaging in any way once the ending occurs. This kind of movie that's mostly just about the journey and not about the destination. We're just supposed to be along for the ride with Robert Pattinson on him going on this insane adventure to do this, this, and that, right? Like, typically this should either be insanely funny or super full of action shootouts and stupid shit like that, or a deep, interesting exploration of, the human spirit or some bullshit like that, right? It should be any of that kind of stuff that I would rave about. But it's not. It's just the dude fucking goes around, goes to White Castle and steals acid, beats a motherfucker up, goes to an apartment, meets a dog, and gets arrested, and then the brother's freed for no real reason that we could see. Like, it's not interesting, it's not engaging, it's not funny, it's not action-packed, it's not really that good at all. Like, if they change the ending to Pattinson and his brother both being in jail together, that would make it so much better. But of course, this doesn't occur. None of the characters either are particularly memorable or funny in any way. Another thing you would hope for from this kind of film. This is just a complete waste of my time and anyone who watches its time. And it had nothing deeper happening that was remotely engaging, nor nothing on the surface level either. Just, I don't get it. I did not get why people liked this. Let me know what I missed, because I had to have missed some shit. But I just, I was sitting there watching this. I was sitting right over there watching this, and I was sitting there watching it going, what the fuck am I missing? Like, I think I was halfway through it, and I was like I paused it, and I was like, okay, what am I missing here? Nothing's happened yet. It's not been fun yet. What the fuck am I missing? Then the movie ended, and I was like, oh God, another one of these. I don't want this to be like, oh God, another thing like Florida Project where I'm one of like 20 people that did not like it. Oh, really? Or I'm one of the 30 people that did not like that fucking Jumanji remake. Like, oh boy, this is not going to go down well. Huh. You know, I don't take joy in shitting on things unless it's particularly atrocious, you know. When we get to our best of the year so far video or show at the end of June, I am so ready to rip Ready Player One, 3 New Assholes. I am so excited to shit all over that movie. But this movie, like, no, like, I did not enjoy shitting on this because this is one a lot of people loved, and I kind of feel like I missed something. But, you know, I missed something. I missed something. I don't. It's fine, you know, that I miss shit. But this thing was just fucking awful. Like, I don't understand it. People, let me know what I missed, because I had to have missed something. Or maybe all of you are idiots. That's a possibility. But I don't like to subscribe to that theory, even though as the days go by, it becomes more and more evident that's probably the correct answer. But that's for a different time. Let's talk about Avengers, why don't we? The new one, not the first one. Let's talk about Infinity War. Now, I'm going to say something here, and before I finish it, do not rip me a new asshole. Like, let me finish my opening statement here after my drink of water here. Infinity War fucking sucks as a standalone film. It relies entirely upon the audience having, at bare minimum, a cursory knowledge of basically 17 other movies worth of plot points, except for Ant-Man. You don't need to know anything from Ant-Man for this, because Ant-Man's not even in this movie. Notably absent for Ant-Man and the Wasp. I think I know how Ant-Man and the Wasp will end, or how it should end. We'll see if they do that, unfortunately, when I go fucking see Ant-Man and the Wasp. I did not care for the first Ant-Man, but God, we'll see. Anywho, the only real characters in this entire film basically are Thanos and me. Like, Tony Stark kind of has a character in this film, but everyone else is not. They're just faces. Which, you know, is in theory fine, but as a standalone film, kills this film. You know, as Marvel assumes, mostly correctly for most of the people watching this, that you've seen all their other movies up to this point and understand everything that's happened before this, understand all the characters, know who they all are, know how they developed as characters in their own movies, all this shit. They assume you know all this already because most of the audience does, or at least doesn't give enough of a fuck to care that they're not told all of this in this one. They also don't bother setting anything up for a sequel in this one, which was really fucking nice. I really liked that they didn't. Like, the ending, the post-credit scene tries to, but I have no idea what it's setting up. You know, I don't know. I'm hoping for Nova Corps, for Nova to show up is what I'm hoping that meant, but I doubt that it did. Now the ending of this film does leave the future of the MCU a little bit in doubt, somewhat. If you've not seen this movie yet, if you're, one of the 5 people on this planet or in this country, if you're one of the 5 people outside of China who have not seen this film yet, most people die at the end of this movie. And there are a lot of those deaths that I just cannot see remaining canon, like Black Panther dies. Like they are not going to let Black Panther die off here because we got to make Black Panther 2 and make shit tons more money, right, Disney? Right. So, that all being said, I loved this. Honestly, this is my favorite MCU film at this point. There's no doubt about it. This was so fucking great. Thanos is a true complex villain, which is something very different for a lot of the MCU. Cap America Civil War kind of has that, but that's just because really the villain is not really a villain. It's political movements are the villain of Civil War, really. And, Black Panther, Killmonger isn't really the villain. The villain's the conservative ideas and, traditions of Wakanda are the true villains of the movie. And those are very fascinating. This is the first time I think Marvel has pulled off the fascinating villain character more than the fascinating villain idea, which is what like Civil War and Black Panther had going for them. So this is terrific as a culmination of, 17 or 18, if you want to count Ant-Man, even though it's not at all in this movie. It goes about as you would expect it to, take that for what you will. Characters make their triumphant return to the screen. Some characters possibly meet their ends, and the events that unfold present giant and legitimate consequences that should and probably will, since this is Marvel and not DC, shape and cast a giant shadow over all future events in the MCU. The action sequences are plentiful and breathtaking to behold. Doctor Strange, in particular, gets to do a lot of cool stuff here that he kind of didn't get to do in his own films, sadly enough. The final battle sequence in Wakanda is lengthy and glorious, and truly this film is a cinematic experience that is unlikely to ever be seen on this kind of a scale ever again, probably. All in all, I love this. This is terrific. I must say that I cannot fully form my full opinion on Infinity War until I see what they do in Avengers 4. How severely are they going to unwind the ending of this? How many people are going to be brought back? And, or will they just stick with this? Will they go, no, everyone fucking dies. See ya. All other MCU movies are going to be prequels to this. See ya. Everyone's fucking dead. Or are they just going to do, well, half of the people die, half the people stay alive. So, these people are dead. We're not using them ever again. And these half will come back and we'll see them in future films. I know a lot of people are speculating, well, the Guardians of the Galaxy have to survive for Guardians 3. Peter Parker has to survive for Spider-Man 2. But I don't think that's necessarily true. I do think it would be kind of dumb to kill off Tom Holland, to kill off Peter Parker's Spider-Man, but you can. And you can bring, you could introduce Miles Morales as Spider-Man into MCU canon. You could do that for the Guardians. To have a Guardians movie, you do kind of have to have some of the Guardians survive. You don't have to have all of them, but you do have to have some. I know I brought up Nova earlier, and as I said, that would be an interesting one if they wanted to bring Nova in and bring the Nova Corps in. He was a member of the Guardians at one point in the comics, so he could. So you could just bring him, and he'd be the leader of the Guardians in Guardians 3. You could just do that. But also, there are a lot of characters that they have yet to introduce into the MCU. All of the Fantastic Four characters, largely due to, Fox holding the film rights, but same thing with the X-Men. Whenever Disney completes their purchase of Fox, then presumably you get all those film rights back, so then you can use, the Fantastic Four, Doctor Doom, Galactus, Silver Surfer, all of those in your MCU films, as well as the X-Men, the entirety of the X-Men crew, Wolverine solo stuff. In theory, if you wanted to, you could do Deadpool. You could introduce Deadpool into the MCU. That would be interesting. But you could do it. Namor the Submariner, another X-Men related character you could bring in. You could bring in Nova, as I've said twice now. You could do stuff with She-Hulk if you want. You could finally do that Moon Knight movie that we all have been clamoring for. You can introduce Adam Warlock or Wonder Man, Beta Ray Bill, the Kamala Khan version of Miss Marvel, as well as the rest of the Inhumans. I don't know about his film rights, but maybe Blade. You could do Blade. That'd be an interesting MCU film. Same thing with a Ghost Rider. I don't know what his film rights look like, but that would be interesting. Darkhawk, who's very similar to Judge Dredd. That'd be another interesting MCU film. As well as Fool Killer was one I thought could be very fascinating, how Marvel would treat. Fool Killer is a Deadpool-style, joke-cracking, fourth-wall-breaking, uber-violent character. But in a different way than Deadpool, is he kills people who he feels have slighted Christianity. So that would be a very interesting MCU movie. As well as if you wanted to introduce the character of Khazar, who is very similar to Tarzan, but with science fiction elements rather than kind of more fantasy elements. And it would also introduce dinosaurs into the MCU if you did it right. So that would be interesting stuff that you could do if you wanted to, Marvel. So, anywho, loved Avengers. I have to see how they resolve it in Avengers 4. And when they do, I will revisit this. I may hate Infinity War, or I may love it even more if they stick with it. They stick with that end. Let's go back to 2017 for My Friend Dahmer. This is a adaptation of a graphic novel. I know that. About serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer. This was the graphic novel. I know was very well received, very well loved, which is written by someone who is a friend in high school to Jeffrey Dahmer, and this is a exploration of how he existed in high school before he started his, serial killer ways, as far as we are aware. This film is moderately interesting. The first hour or so is so fucking awful. But the last, I'd say 30, 40 minutes, we start to explore Dahmer's desire to harm others, as well as his repressed homosexuality and his attempts to resist all of these urges that he is having. Unfortunately, we never really explore those as deep as we should have, nor the root of these, of specifically the murderous impulses that Dahmer has. What we are presented with is a decent film and a wonderfully acted portrayal of Jeffrey Dahmer. One of the rare instances I will do this, I must issue a content warning for this film. If you have any issue with any of the following topics used as comedy, do be advised to either stay away from this film or be aware of it going into it. But the first hour takes place in the 1970s high school, so they use a lot of 1970s era appropriate humor, notably mocking people who are mentally handicapped or suffer from seizures, as well as casually referring to people, entirely guys, as faggots. So if any of that is an issue, be aware. There isn't really any like gore or anything at all in this. Whatsoever. There's not really any that I can recall. There is one somewhat awkward masturbation scene, but nothing too bad. But all in all, I quite enjoyed it. I found it to be very interesting after the first hour. But the first hour is a slog. The last 30, 40 minutes is pretty good, admittedly. Unfortunately, there's a fucking hour worth of shit you had to get through, though. Up next, we head to 1979 for the film Stalker. This is a Andrei Tarkovsky, I believe is how you pronounce his name, film. The only reason I checked this out, I've been trying to get more into classic foreign sci-fi, and this is Tarkovsky's a highly touted foreign sci-fi director. Between this and Solaris, a couple of his other works I know are well adored as well, but I don't remember them offhand. But other than that, this is a film that was, a lot of people I know said that one of the movies, my favorite movie so far from this year, Annihilation, took some plot elements from Stalker, and I was very interested to see if that's true, and if so, what they took. So Stalker's about it's set up as a meteor crashes into Earth and spawns a weird, trippy, and bizarre environment around it known as the Zone. So very similar to Annihilation with the Shimmer. Now, Stalker at that point is very different from Annihilation after that general plot setup. If anything, the book version of Annihilation takes more from Stalker than the film does. As you know, Stalker, the characters are only ever given names of their occupation. You have the professor, the writer, and the man known as Stalker, which is apparently a job, apparently, where you take people on expeditions into the Zone to reach the room at the end of the zone, at the center of the zone, that you go inside, and apparently the room grants you your deepest desire, whatever that may be. So, that's very, very different from Annihilation movie. I didn't get all the way through the book. I did not care for the book. I bought it. I bought the whole trilogy. the big one that has all three of them in it. I didn't care too much for the Book of Annihilation. I think I got halfway through it and I was like, this is fucking awful. What is this? But the you know, in the book, those characters are only ever given their you know, their jobs, their roles as their names. They're never actually named, and that's very similar here in Stalker now. Stalker is very good. It's very long. It's like 2.5 hours, like 240, I think, actually. It's really fucking long. And it felt a bit too long. You know, I am notorious for never stating things to be too long, for actually saying a lot of times things are too short. Like Blade Runner 2049 is the big one that I got into minor arguments over, that I felt that, no, Blade Runner 2049 is not too long. Some people are arguing. I thought it could use even more time. I thought I would love to see a 3-hour or longer director cut of this Blade Runner. It probably won't do it, but, you know, nonetheless, I would love to see it. But Stalker was a bit too long, mostly in that it used its runtime inappropriately at the end. The last, I'd say 10 minutes just confounded me. I had no idea what the fuck was going on. Not in a good way either, because they had come out of the zone and they were back at Stalker's house, and then just random shit starts happening. The one thing that is very, very helpful when you watch this, I do recommend the Criterion Blu-ray. That's the one I watched, and it is a fucking beautiful restoration. Is that anytime they are in the zone, the film is in color. Anytime it's a dream sequence or they are outside of the zone, it's not black and white, but it's like yellow tinted, which is a weird choice, but it's like yellow. So that'll help you on watching this to understand everything that's going on, because it's somewhat non-linear, or a lot of weird, you know, flashback type shit going on. So when it's not in color, they are outside of the zone. But I found this to be a very interesting mediation, mostly on sorrow and what it truly means to desire something. And I liked it. I felt that, you know, you can keep a 2-hour, 40-minute runtime, but those last 10, 15 minutes, if you just spent more time in the zone showing us interesting stuff going on in there, that would have been a much better usage of your time than the fucking stupid 10-minute end to this. But all in all, I still quite enjoyed Stalker. If this is of concern to you, it is in, I want to say Russian. I'm not for certain what language it is in. But if that is an issue for you, be aware that it is in a non-English, non-American English language. So, you know, you'll have to read subtitles, which, of course, with me is perfectly fine, but some people I know have issues. Because, you know, they're weird. So back to more recent films. Murder on the Orient Express, the Kenneth Branagh, I believe is how you pronounce the last name, version here. If you're a longtime listener, longtime follower of this channel, you may recall a little video back when we were doing our dual reviews segments. We no longer do those as my co-host did not care for them too much. As you notice, I'm the only one that does the reviews, except for at the half and endway points anymore. By and large, anyway, we did a review when this film came out in the theater. We reviewed the 1970s version. And we both hated that. I hated it more, but we both hated the 70s version. I liked this one. I didn't love it. I still think this is a hawking pile of shit, especially with the end. But I enjoyed it this time, though. I liked this one. Unfortunately, the stupid honking pile of shit ending is still here, which is a absolute ridiculous outcome. Absurd and illogical. I described it as here in my review, which is presumably the same as in the original source material. I don't know. I don't read 1930s mysteries. I'm not a big reader of 1930s mystery novels, but I assume it's the same fucking ending, which is, to me, so stupid and so contrived and so absurd that I don't understand why people think it's so fucking brilliant. But this version at least alters itself enough that this ridiculous outcome kind of works. It still doesn't fully work because they at least acknowledge, like, oh, well, these two got on earlier to throw off suspicion, and these people got on at a different stop, so it doesn't look as weird. It's not as insane. And, oh, this one masterminded the whole thing, got everyone together like, hey, such and such is going to be on this train this day. We're all going to be on the train to kill this motherfucker. Everyone else is going to be there. Are you coming or not? And stuff. So it at least acknowledges it. And it at least tries to explain, like, well, this is how this actually happened. Like, this is the logistics of how we made it happen. It's still fishy. It's still fucking weird, but it works more than it did in the 70s. Also, Kenneth Branagh is like 85 miles ahead of the 70s dude who played Poirot. Like, I noted here that the greatest achievement of Branagh as Poirot is that I am actually able to understand more than 30% of his dialogue without having the subtitles on. So that is true. I like this one a lot more than I did the 70s. To me, this is the best adaptation that I've seen of this story. And very good, but still way too ridiculous. Then let's see, Den of Thieves is up next. This is really short. Den of Thieves, if you've ever seen the Michael Mann film Heat, which is an incredible film, highly recommend it. This is the same movie, just made in modern context with more modern storytelling tropes, more modern writing, and with Gerard Butler. With Gerard Butler's fucking biceps in the movie. It's fine. You know, if this was its own original film, this would be really great. I would really like it, but it's just an insanely less interesting version of Heat from both a narrative and an artistic standpoint. Christian Gudegast is not Michael Mann. I will admit the opening and closing shootout sequences are legitimately fucking great. The rest of this movie is stupid. There's some bits that are like that make no sense. Like, you just randomly get this like 1 minute scene of Gerard Butler staring at some woman's tits in a stripper joint. Like, what's the point? Why do I need to see Gerard Butler's at a strip club? Why? Like, I understand the straight dudes, the audience are gonna be like, oh fuck yeah, you know, the stereotypical straight guys are gonna be super into that. But like, I don't need to see some woman's tits for a minute when it has no purpose. Like, I get enough of that from watching Game of Thrones all the time. Like, I don't need more pointless female nudity. I'm good, people. But we'll get to pointless nudity later in this series of reviews. Don't worry. What's next? The other old film I watched, relatively old compared to the other stuff here, from 1969, Funeral Parade of Roses. This is a Japanese film, I believe, which this was on Turner Classic Movies on TCM one night, and I was scrolling through. I scrolled through all the movie channels that I get to see, like, ooh, this sounds interesting. Let me record this so I can watch it at some point, and I don't have to buy a DVD or try and hunt it down at the library or something, or try and hunt it down on the internet somewhere in a completely legal fashion. And I'm like, oh, this sounds interesting. Okay, because like the plot summary billed it as a gay inversion of the King Oedipus story, which King Oedipus is a Greek play where King Oedipus kills his father and then fucks his mother. Is the short version of the story. He kills his father and then fucks his mother. That's the short version. So the plot summary on the television said that this is the gay version where a gay son kills his mother and fucks his father. Yeah, this is not that. Like, technically that is in the movie, but that's like a minute of the hour 40-minute film or so. Like, it's a minute of the movie. And the best part is that that's not actually the plot of the movie that you're watching. That's the plot of the movie that is within the movie. As Funeral Parade of Roses is actually about a mockumentary, like This Is Spinal Tap, about a film production company that is it's like a behind the scenes documentary is what it's shot like and how it's presented, of these people making a film about a troubled gay boy in Japan who is working as, essentially at the time in 60s Japan, apparently gay boys were essentially male prostitutes who dressed in drag and were supposed to present as women. And this is mostly about that, this film, which is kind of an interesting story. Unfortunately, it's kind of the background of the movie. The foreground is mostly about this film company trying to make a movie that is a gay version of the King Oedipus tale. And it's moderately interesting. There's some really bizarre artistic sequences that are very bizarre at the time, but are kind of charming because there's, like, I'd say 2 or 3 fight sequences that just randomly, all of a sudden, out of the blue, turn into like a Charlie Chaplin style silent film slapstick fight scene. Which the first time it happened, I think I was laughing for like 2 minutes straight, mostly in the "what the fuck is this" style, where it made no sense to me. I had no idea what was going on, but it was still a very weird but interesting film nonetheless. So I enjoyed it, but it was interesting. It's really weird, but the film is not like the plot summary. I'll tell you that it's about this gay son who kills his mother and fucks his father. It's not even remotely close to being about that. But nonetheless, that's what plot summary said, and that got me interested enough to watch it. But it's not about that, so be aware of that going into it. So another 2017 film. This was a short, called "I Was There Too." I got to find it on my spreadsheet. I should organize this in a more logical way. There it is. Okay. I have this big spreadsheet of all of my reviews compiled with the short version of my review, longer than the one I post on Twitter, but shorter than the full written review, as well as with film info and shit like that, and my percentage. So okay, I found it. Okay. So I Was There Too was to me, it was solid. It's 15 minutes, and it's a deeply unsettling film that's about the lengths one man is willing to go to in order to be around his daughter and ex-wife more often. He goes so far as to pretend to be a survivor of a mass shooting at a movie theater, just so that he can be around his daughter more often. Unfortunately, this film does not explore, the fucked up psyche that this dude has, and just the like how insane this guy is. It does not explore that. Doesn't even want to talk about it whatsoever. Really, it just wants you to do that, which is fine. I'm cool with stuff wanting me to think for myself and decide and get my own conclusions out of it and whatnot. I loved Mother, and that Mother did all of that. Much different film than this, but I enjoyed it. I would recommend it, but it's fucked up. Like, it's not. It's fucked up in a deep way. Like, it's not on the surface level. Like, there's not a bunch of gore or anything like that. It's just on a psychological level, really disturbing when you think about what you just watched transpire. Unfortunately, I don't want to talk about that, but what can you do? Next film I have up is Rampage, which I saw at the theater. Why? Oh boy. Don't really want to talk about why I was dragged into this fucking movie, but I was. Boy. So, as anyone who knows me in any capacity would expect, I fucking hated Rampage. I sat through it. I did not leave. One time I've left from a film early, and that was Pirates of the Caribbean 3. I left about 20 minutes early because I was so fucking done. And then, for some reason, my stupid ass went and watched the fourth one anyway. I was smart enough to not go see 5. Yet to watch it, I really don't. I am going to try as hard as I fucking can to not watch Pirates 5. But at this point, I might, because I am that much of an obsessive completist with stuff. I fucking I have sat through the Roseanne reboot every week just because I loved it initially. And God, we can get into that some other time, but Jesus Christ. Anywho, Rampage is exactly what you would expect it to be. It's stupid, pointless, and just an awful excuse for a movie. The only thing that this movie is attempting to do is to, in some way, explain why you are watching The Rock fighting a giant monkey, a giant crocodile, and a giant wolf. That's all it's trying to do. And does it do that? Yeah, it explains why. It's really fucking dumb, but it explains it. There's nothing remotely interesting about any of the plot developments, if you can even be generous enough to call what happens in this movie a plot. All of the fight scenes with the monsters go exactly as you'd expect for them to. The monsters are invincible, unkillable creatures. Everything the army, everything the military throws at them basically just glances off, like they threw a fucking foam bow and arrow at them. It's like they shot him with a Nerf gun. It like just bounces right off. Like, oh no, I didn't fucking feel that. So the last 10 minutes or so of the movie, when it turns into like a Americanized kaiju film, is by far the best bit, and that's when all the monsters start fighting each other. That's by far the best bit, but unfortunately, it's an Americanized kaiju film, so we are mostly focusing on the human characters' reactions to all the fighting, and we're supposed to be taking this absolutely super seriously and not, the nod, wink, wink, we know this is stupid and silly. And we're going to focus on showing you the giant monsters that are actually dudes in suits, wrestling with each other. That the classic Japanese kaiju films have. This is straight up an Americanized version of that for the last 10 minutes. That's by far the best version, or by far the best part of the movie, and is the other hour and 40 minutes or something of this movie. The other hour and a half is just so worthless, so pointless. The major problem with this movie, I'm just going to read straight off my review here, as I'm not going to be able to word this any better. The major problem with Rampage is that this film thinks that it is a serious character drama, when in reality is nothing more than a ridiculous excuse for The Rock to attempt to fight a giant crocodile. I mean, I can't say it better than myself. Additionally, a thing I noticed while I was watching this, after I thought about it more, when I was in the car driving back home, I was like, okay, I was thinking about this, even though this is such a stupid movie and there's nothing really to think about. I was like, wait, the wolf seems so familiar. Then I realized, oh my god, the wolf in this movie is fucking Varan from Godzilla. Like, Varan is this wolf-like creature in the Godzilla films that has like porcupine spikes on his spine and has, winged squirrel wings growing out of him that he flies with. They stole fucking Varan for your movie. Obviously, the big monkey's King Kong. So you could only manage to come up with a giant crocodile. And the more I thought about it, I was like, he's kind of similar to Anguirus, I think, is the one from Godzilla, but not fully. He's like half Anguirus. Yeah, the crocodile's kind of like halfway to being Anguirus. But the wolf is straight up Varan from Godzilla. If you don't believe me, just go Google image search for Varan, Varan. The wolf is straight up Varan. Which is really sad that for your giant monster movie, you couldn't come up with your own monsters. Like, I understand the big gorilla. Okay, fine, whatever. But you couldn't come up with two somewhat different creatures? Like, oh, a wolf and a crocodile. Okay. So a movie from 2017 I quite enjoyed. Not enough to make it into my top 10, at this point, but nonetheless, very good. Is Hostiles. This is a beautifully shot, yet very simplistic Western, which I find the best Westerns to be very simplistic tales about a white captain, played terrifically by Christian Bale, who has to escort a Native American chief and his family back to their native homeland that they've been gifted, their native reservation land they've been given. Not their native land, as they're in America. So guess what? They're in their native land technically, but, we're not going to consider that. No, not for this movie. Anywho, the themes of redemption, forgiveness, as well as duty are explored in very simple but effective ways throughout this and the entirety of this film. Also, this is another film that I have to issue, one of the rare instances I will do so, a content warning, as this is a brutally violent film. This is not any kind of a spoiler, but I can't get into those on this. Within the first 5 minutes of the movie, you see explicitly, it's not just implied, you explicitly see a baby get murdered in the first 5 minutes of this movie. As well as like a 10 and like maybe 12 or 13-year-old girl get fucking murdered. Like it's brutal shit. There's a lot of other brutal violence in this. Also, this is filled with a lot of racial slurring. So if that's an issue, be aware. It's all racial slurs toward Native Americans, so it's a lot of red skin and stuff like that that's used, not not the other ones, not the ones you'd automatically assume. It's not those. There is a black character, which brought up an interesting dynamic that the film didn't address, but does bring up an interesting dynamic of Christian Bale's willing to work with, be around with, and trust a black man, but not a native man, really, especially at the beginning, which is an interesting dynamic, to say the least, that this film has in it with that. But this was a great film. I loved it. Highly recommend this one. Another one I highly recommend from last year, Logan Lucky. This is quite simply, if you're a fan of great comedy, you got to check this one out. This is, I would say, one of, if not the funniest movies of the year. Girls Trip, I think, is the other one that I would say. Disaster Artist as well are probably the best comedies from last year. This one's right up there in terms of funniness. Where was I in my summary? Right. Adam Driver in particular is absolutely hilarious in this film as the one-armed bartender. But all the cast is wonderful. Channing Tatum's great. Daniel Craig's great. The ladies, whose names I don't know, which is not good, are also great. All in all, Riley Keough, I think she's in here. Riley Keough, I believe, is how you pronounce her name. She's really good too. Nonetheless, all the cast wonderful, and the heist, which is the central plot element of this whole movie. This movie is not attempting to be a comedy. It's a heist movie that just happens to have comedic elements and comedic sequences. It's a heist film with a comedic tone, is really what it is. This heist is very well constructed and pulled off in a way that almost seems realistic almost, you know, obviously not quite. There's obviously, with any kind of a heist film, a high suspension of disbelief, you know. But this one is one of the ones I would say that is one of the more realistic heist films I've ever seen, I think. I mean, I've never, you know, robbed a motor speedway, but it seemed to be rather realistic. And there is a twist in the third act that left me absolutely floored when it happened. That twist being that after pulling off this highly successful heist, they stole millions of dollars that seemingly they gave all the money back. They didn't take any of it. We later are revealed, you know, we get the double twist of no, that's not entirely true. You know, that whole sequence, I was just going, what? Oh my God. Okay, Soderbergh, where you go? Oh, that's where you're going. Oh, damn. Okay. Wow. So I really loved this. This was a great, great film. Now, not so much of a great film, but okay. Batman, Gotham by Gaslight. This is a fairly standard Batman animated flick. He's transported back to Victorian England and must solve the case of Jack the Ripper. Now, you know, the animation in this one is nothing special, although I will admit that the reveal of who Jack the Ripper is, it is an established Batman character, is very interesting and paints the character in a very different and new light. But nothing else about this film is particularly fun or interesting, really, at all. But you know, that the identity of Jack the Ripper is pretty interesting, but the rest of it, not at all. But you know, it's your standard thing. You're not going to get anything special out of this movie, but it's fine. It's entertaining. It's a solid hour and a half that you can spend with a with a weird little animated, not really weird, but with an animated flick. My last film from last year here today, Cult of Chucky. Finally got around to this one after I heard so many good things. I wasn't a fan of most of the other Chuckies. I liked Child's Play and Bride, but I wasn't really into the other Chuckies. This was fucking great, man. The kills are gory, fresh, inventive, and frequent throughout this film, which, of course, that's what you want out of this kind of slasher film. You know, that's what you're here for. You're here for the kills. You're not here for the interesting, engaging, deeply moving story. That's not what you're here at a slasher film for, you know. You're here for the kills, right? And a couple of them even managed to get a reaction of disgust out of me, which is a high mark to clear, you know. You know, I mean, there is a decapitation that is fucking brutal in this film. The story, admittedly, is actually interesting, mildly here. It's not super interesting, but it's mildly interesting. We partially deal with themes of mental instability and sexual abuse and a deeply flawed medical system. Are briefly touched upon, but you know, the film's not concerned with addressing those because, you know, again, we're a slasher movie. We're not here to discuss deep, interesting thematic elements. We're here to show you cool, interesting murders. Like, that's what we're here for. And the story is solid enough to keep you entertained and engaged with what's happening in between the terrific scenes with Chucky. I really enjoyed this one. Highly recommend it. You know, and I'd honestly say that as long as you've seen Child's Play and Bride, that Bride of Chucky, that from what I recall, you don't need to have seen the other Chucky films, because I saw the third one. I forget what that was called, and I didn't see 4, 5, or 6. I know this is 7, so it worked perfectly well without me having seen those other ones. So I presume it's fine. As long as you've seen those first 2. Otherwise, there are a few bits where you're just going to be like, what the fuck are they talking about? But nothing that is going to overly detract from the story, I don't believe. But you will be a little confused as to what in the world's going on for a little bit. But, you know, up to you what you want to do. So the last film, I told you we'd get back to talking about unnecessary and uncomfortable female nudity. So let's talk about Red Sparrow. Boy, God. I just watched this last night, and I am struggling to remember what happened. Granted, I didn't really know what was happening while I was watching the movie. The plot barely makes any sense. There are so many plot twists that I'm not really sure what actually happened in the movie, as you can tell here, or what half of these plot twists even contributed to the story. The acting here from Jennifer Lawrence and Joel Edgerton specifically is great. As you know, both of them are pretty much always in most of their films, but this film is just so deeply uninteresting. Now, granted, everything happens about as you would expect for this kind of a spy thriller type movie. If it weren't for the approximately 8 or so plot twists, and if it weren't for those, this would be about a 90-minute standard spy thriller. Instead, this is a 140-minute mess of nonsense. And almost all of that 50-minute difference could have easily been cut, and you would not have lost a damn thing here. There are lots of scenes that are purely laying out the groundwork for their big final twist. So when they first happen, you're like, what is the point of that? What the fuck is that? What is J-Law doing here? What's the point of this? Then an hour later, you're like, oh, that's why she went and opened a bank account for that. Really? You expect a standard American audience to sit here for a 2.5-hour film and remember something that happened in the first 30 minutes 2 hours later? You really think the 90% of the Americans that are going to watch this fucking movie have that long of a memory and that long of an attention span? I don't think so. You know, and after that reveal, those scenes still barely make sense, because it's like, well, okay, so she stole a cup. Why does that matter? But they're like, no, it matters because it proves that she could do this and that. Like, what the fuck are you going on about? There's also a ton of female nudity. There is one cock shot, which was nice. That, you know, equal opportunity, except it's, well, we see J-Law's tits for, I'd approximate 10 to 15 minutes, and we see this one dude's cock for 10 to 15 minutes is a lot. Maybe 1 minute of screen time we see J-Law's tits out, but we see this dude's cock for like 2 seconds. So, you know. And most of this nudity from J-Law seems so unnecessary. And, you know, it's downright uncomfortable at times, most explicitly in the 2 attempted rape scenes, where 2 different dudes attempt to rape J-Law. Like, yeah, I could have done without those here. Who directed this? Francis Lawrence. I could have done without the 2 attempted rape scenes here. I know that both of them were, well, one was kind of important to the plot. I'm not really sure of the other one, but one was kind of important to the plot point they're trying to have happen at that time. But all in all, this thing was fucking awful. I do not recommend you sit through this. It's 2.5 hours of utter nonsense that will leave you bored and confounded at times. Do not bother with Red Sparrow. Do seek out Logan Lucky. That is what you should take away from this episode here today. So that will do it for this episode of the Glide, or not the Glide, God, wrong podcast. That will do it for this episode of Unspooled with Isaac Coate, which is me, of course. So you enjoyed, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more great content like this. And until the next episode, goodbye.